Hello, and welcome to LSET Tech Byte.
Today, we'll be creating a simple login and registration form using HTML, CSS, and PHP, and we'll connect it to a MySQL database using XAMPP. Let's go through the steps together. Step 1. Install XAMPP. First, make sure you have XAMPP installed on your system. XAMPP is a free and open-source cross-platform web server solution stack package developed by Apache Friends, consisting mainly of the Apache HTTP server, MariaDB database, and interpreters for scripts written in the PHP and Perl programming languages. Step 2. Open phpMyAdmin. Open your browser and visit localhost PHP. This will take you to phpMyAdmin, a free software tool written in PHP, intended to handle the administration of MySQL over the web. Step 3. Create a new database. In phpMyAdmin, create a new database. Let's name it Users. This database will store our user information for the login and registration system. Step 4. Create a table. You can name it anything you like, but let's call it User Data for this example. Add the necessary columns such as ID, username, and password. Step 5. Create index.php. This file will contain our HTML structure for the login and registration forms. This declaration defines the document type and version of HTML being used. Here, it indicates HTML5. This tag starts the HTML document and specifies the language of the document, which is English. This section contains metadata and links related to the document. This specifies the character encoding for the document, ensuring that it handles text correctly. This tag ensures the web page is responsive and sets the viewport to scale based on the device's width. This sets the title of the web page, which is displayed in the browser's title bar or tab. This links the HTML document to an external CSS file named style.css, which will be used for styling. This tag defines the body of the HTML document, which contains all the content that will be displayed on the web page. This is a division element with the class container, used to group and style elements. This division element has two classes, login and form, and it contains the login form. This header element contains the text login, which serves as the title for the login form. This is a text input field for the username and email, with a placeholder text and a required attribute. This is a password input field with a placeholder text and a required attribute. This is a submit button with the text login. When clicked, it submits the form data. This division contains a message for users who don't have an account. This span contains the text "don't have an account" and a label for the checkbox with the ID check. Clicking the label toggles the sign-up form. This division element has two classes, registration and form, and it contains the registration form. This header element contains the text sign-up, which serves as the title for the registration form. This form element will send its data to the server using the POST method when submitted. The action attribute currently points to the same page. This is a text input field for the username and email, with a placeholder text and a required attribute. This is a password input field for the password, with a placeholder text and a required attribute. This is a password input field for confirming the password, with a placeholder text and a required attribute. This is a submit button with the text sign up. When clicked, it submits the form data. This division contains a message for users who already have an account. This span contains the text "already have an account" and a label for the checkbox with the ID check. Clicking the label toggles the login form. Now let's create the CSS file style.css to style our form. This universal selector applies styles to all elements on the page, removes any default margins, removes any default padding, sets the default font family for all elements to Arial, with fallbacks to Helvetica and sans serif. Targets the body element of the page. Sets the minimum height to 100% of the viewport height. Sets the width to 100% of the viewport width. Sets the background color to a shade of green. Targets elements with the class container. Position absolute positions the container absolutely relative to its nearest positioned ancestor. Top 50% moves the container 50% down from the top of the positioned ancestor. Left 50% moves the container 50% from the left of the positioned ancestor. Transform translate 50% minus 50% translates the container minus 50% horizontally and vertically, effectively centering it. Max width 430 pixels sets the maximum width of the container to 430 pixels. Width 100% sets the width to 100 of the parent element's width. Sets the background color to white. Border radius 7 pixel rounds the corners of the container with a radius of 7 pixels. Box shadow 0.5 pixel 10 pixel RGBA adds a shadow with a horizontal offset of 0, vertical offset of 5 pixels, a blur radius of 10 pixels, and a semi-transparent black color. Targets elements with the class registration that are descendants of elements with the class container. Display none hides the registration form by default. This targets the registration form when the checkbox with the ID check is checked. Display block displays the registration form when the checkbox is checked. Checked login targets the login form when the checkbox with the ID check is checked. Display none hides the login form when the checkbox is checked. This targets the checkbox with the ID check. Display none hides the checkbox from view. Container form targets elements with the class form that are descendants of elements with the class container. Padding 2 rem adds padding of 2 rem units inside the form. Form header targets header elements within elements with the class form. Font size 2 rem sets the font size to 2 rem units. Font weight 500 sets the font weight to 500. Text align center centers the text. Margin bottom 1.5 rem adds a margin of 1.5 rem units below the header. Form input targets input elements within elements with the class form. Height 60 pixels sets the height to 60 pixels. Width 100% sets the width to 100%. Padding 0.15 pixel adds horizontal padding of 15 pixels and no vertical padding. Font size 17 pixels sets the font size to 17 pixels. Margin bottom 1.3 rem adds a margin of 1.3 rem units below the input. Border 1 pixel solid adds a 1 pixel solid border with a light gray color. 6 pixel rounds the corners with a radius of 6 pixels. Outline none removes the default outline when the input is focused. Form input focus targets input elements within elements with the class form when they are focused. Box shadow 1 pixel 0 RGB A adds a shadow with a horizontal offset of 0, vertical offset of 1 pixel, no blur, and a semi-transparent black color. Former targets anchor elements within elements with the class form. Font size 16 pixels sets the font size to 16 pixels. Color sets the text color to a shade of red. Text decoration none removes the underline from the text. Former hover targets anchor elements within elements with the class form when they are hovered over. Text decoration underline adds an underline to the text when hovered. Form input button targets input elements with the class button within elements with the class form. Color sets the text color to white. Background sets the background color to a shade of red. Font size 1.2 rem sets the font size to 1.2 rem unit. Font weight 500 sets the font weight to 500. Letter spacing 1 pixel adds 1 pixel of spacing between letters. Margin top 1.7 rem adds a margin of 1.7 rem units above the input. Cursor pointer changes the cursor to a pointer when hovered over. Transition adds a transition effect with a duration of 0.4 seconds. Form input button hover targets input elements with the class button within elements with the class form when they are hovered over. Background changes the background color to orange when hovered. Sign up targets elements with the class sign up. Font size 17 pixels sets the font size to 17 pixel. Text align centers the text. Sign up label targets label elements within elements with the class sign up. Color sets the text color to a shade of red. Cursor pointer changes the cursor to a pointer when hovered over. Sign up label hover targets label elements within elements with the class sign up when they are. Step 7 create db.php. Next, let's create a PHP file db.php to handle the database connection. Defines the database host, which in this case is localhost. This indicates that the database server is running on the same machine as the PHP code. Username users sets the username for the database connection to users. Password sets the password for the database connection to users 1, 2, 3, 4. DB name users defines the name of the database to connect to, which is users. MySQLi connect host, username, password, DB name, attempts to establish a connection to the ISQL database using the provided host, username, password, and database name. If my SQLi connect error checks if there was an error during the connection attempt. My SQLi connect error returns the error code from the last connection attempt. Echo failed to connect to my SQL. My SQLi connect error if there was an error, it outputs an error message. My SQLi connect error returns a string description of the last connection error. Exit terminates the script if the connection fails to prevent further execution. Step 8. Add PHP script to index.php. Let's go back to our index.php file and add a PHP script to handle the form submission. Session start initiates a new session or resumes an existing session. This allows you to store and retrieve data across multiple pages. Include dbphp includes the db.php file, which contains the database connection code. If server request method POST checks if the form was submitted using the POST method, if POST login checks if the login form was submitted by verifying if the login button was pressed, username POST username retrieves the username from the POST data. Password POST retrieves the password from the POST data. SQL select from users where username prepares an SQL statement to select all columns from the users table where the username matches a placeholder value. If my SQLi prepare on SQL prepares the SQL statement for execution and returns a statement object. If successful, the statement object is stored in STMT. My SQLi STMT bind param STMTS. Username binds the username variable to the placeholder in the SQL statement. The S indicates that the bound parameter is a string. My SQLi STMT execute STMT executes the prepared statement. My SQLi STMT get result STMT retrieves the result set from the executed statement. If my SQLi fetch ASOC result, this fetches the result row as an associative array. This verifies that the entered password matches the hashed password stored in the database. This stores the username in the session. This redirects the user to welcome.php. If the password verification fails, an error message is displayed. If no user is found with the given username, an error message is displayed. This closes the prepared statement. If the SQL statement preparation fails, an error message is displayed. This checks if the registration form was submitted by verifying if the register button was pressed. This retrieves the username from the POST data. This retrieves the password from the POST data. This retrieves the confirm password from the POST data. This checks if the password and confirm password fields match. If not, an error message is displayed. If the passwords match, the following code is executed. This hashes the password using the default hashing algorithm. This prepares an SQL statement to insert a new user into the users table. This prepares the SQL statement for execution and returns a statement object if successful. The statement object is stored in STMT. This binds the username and hash password variables to the placeholders in the SQL statement. The SS indicates that both bound parameters are strings. This executes the prepared statement. If the execution is successful, a success message is displayed. If the statement execution fails, an error message is displayed. Closes the prepared statement. If the SQL statement preparation fails, an error message is displayed. My SQLi closes the database connection. Create welcome.php. Finally, let's create a welcome.php file to display a welcome message after successful login. Doctype HTML declares the document type and version of HTML being used. Here it specifies HTML5, opens the HTML document and specifies the language as English. Starts the head section of the HTML document, which contains meta information about the document. Specifies the character encoding for the document as UTF-8, which supports a wide range of characters and symbols. This ensures the web page is responsive and sets the viewport to match the device's width, making it suitable for all devices. This sets the title of the web page, which appears in the browser's title bar or tab, displays a level 1 heading with the text welcome. The H1 tag is used for the main heading of the page, indicating its importance. This HTML code creates a simple web page with a welcome heading. It includes essential meta tags for character encoding and responsiveness, making the page accessible and suitable for various devices. Now that we've created all the necessary files and written the code, it's time to test our application. Try registering a new user and then logging in with the credentials you created. Alright, our login and registration form is fully functional and ready to use. If you enjoy this tutorial, please like, share and subscribe to get more videos like this. Thanks for watching and happy coding.